Hey everybody, it's Jack with Future Pastimes. I'm a designer on Dune-themed games and expansions. And in this video, I want to talk about stronghold blocking in Dune. What is it? Why would you want to do it? How do you work around it? And some special examples with some of the newer factions and how they impact stronghold blocking. Hopefully this will cover everything. It almost certainly won't. So at the end of it, if you didn't hear what you were hoping to learn about stronghold blocking, be sure to ask those questions. I'll answer them as quickly as I can, and there may even be a follow-up video. So let's start off with talking about what exactly is it. Now, in the basic setup of the game, we're not talking about when there's also the Ixian Hidden Mobile Stronghold or Jacurutu Siege from Expansion 3. You've got 5 strongholds. You have Arakeen and Carthag, Siege Tabor, Habania Siege, and Tuic Siege. Now, the rules state you can only have 2 factions in a stronghold, and if there are 2, then a third faction cannot ship or move into that stronghold. It is blocked. So when 2 different factions are in a stronghold, they prevent other factions from entering into that stronghold. And if you have one of these other factions that wants to get into it is a faction that is poised to win the game, you are preventing them from winning the game in that turn. Now, the factions that are in the stronghold will have to battle when you get to the battle phase, so it comes with a cost, but we're going to talk about ways to minimize that cost. So the reason that you would do stronghold blocking is to give yourself time to put yourself into a better position to win the game. So if you're in a weakened state, like you went for the win earlier and it didn't work out for you, and you've got a lot of forces in the tanks, or you lost your best treachery cards, your spice poor, you're not in a position to win. And it's hard for you to prevent somebody from winning by just battling them. If they're in a very strong position, have a lot of forces and spice, then you're not going to be able to prevent them from winning that way. But if you work with other factions that are also not in a position to win, you may be able to prevent the stronger factions from winning that turn. So that is what you're trying to do. Just buy yourself more time to get back into the game. So one of the most commonly asked questions about that is, like, say, hey, there's 2 factions in there. Does that mean if I'm one of the factions in there, I can't move or ship forces in? I'm blocked as well? And the answer is no. You can keep adding more of your forces. So if you started the shipping and movement phase with, say, 2 forces in Arakeen, and the first player who goes in turn order has shipped 5 forces into that stronghold, when it comes to your turn, you can ship more forces. And or if you have forces that can move into that stronghold, you can still move forces in as well. So the 2 factions in the stronghold can continue adding forces in if they're able to by shipment and or by movement. It's the other factions. They can't get in here. Now, it should be noted that if advisors are in a stronghold, this is the Bene Gesserit advisors, they don't count as really being on the board at all. They have no impact on that sort of thing. So they don't count as one of the 2 factions. So if you've got advisors in Carthag and the Atreides ship in there, other factions can still come in there. And in fact, when the Atreides ship in there, the Bene Gesserit can add another advisor, at least in advance. They can just go, whoop, I'm adding another advisor. But my advisors are just advising. We're coexisting peacefully with the Atreides here, giving them some hot tips and hot goss on what's going on in the Imperium. We are not ready to fight. They would actually have to leave, or they would have had to flip to fighters before the shipping and movement phase if they want to fight. So the Harkonnen can absolutely still ship in and move forces in there. And you would technically have 3 factions in there, but the advisors don't count. All right, so let's talk about how do you effectively do some stronghold blocking. Well, by and large, you're making deals with other factions. Now, the typical deal that we like to use if we're say, hey, it's going to be a throne fight, it's going to be a throne battle. So if I've got some forces in Siege Tabor and I want to prevent the Harkonnen from getting in there, and they're moving later in the round, so I'm going to reach out to one of the factions that's going earlier in Storm Order in the shipping and movement phase, and I'm saying, why don't we make a deal here? I don't have the capabilities to defeat the Harkonnen on my own. I can't afford it, or I just don't have the cards, or they've got my number, whatever the case may be. So let's say the Fremen are going earlier. I say, why don't you send one force in there and throw this battle to me, and I will make it worth your while. I'll give you a couple of spice. Or if both factions are in desperate straits, the deal can just be throw the fight, and that's the end of it. We prevent the Harkonnen from winning. Now, throne battle, the default rules that we use, and we can just say throw the battle, and we don't have to go through and get a lawyer out and sign a contract. But what that means is you're just going to be playing, if you're throwing the battle to me, you're just going to play a lower strength leader. I'll play a higher strength leader. We don't even use the battle wheels. We just put the leaders out there and say, all right, we're both dialing 0. We're not playing any weapons, so we don't have to worry about weapons or defenses. And that way, it's the higher total. So if I've played a 5 strength leader and you've played a 2, I win the battle. Your 1 force that you brought in there does go to the tanks. That's unfortunate. Yes, somebody had to die, even when we're making a peaceful deal. But there's nobody's leader is dead, and we don't have to reveal any treachery cards if we don't want to. Now, you can still get rid of worthless cards if you want. You can still play a cheap hero. That's a great way to throw a battle. You just say, yeah, I'll just play this cheap hero, and then you can play any one of your leaders because that will beat the cheap hero. And now, because we're both in the stronghold, the Harkonnen or whoever it is you're trying to stop can't get in there. Now, in other cases, let's say that you are in a much wealthier position. You can bribe people to throw the battle for you. Or you can make deals that just involve spice. So you can say, look, here you come in here and throw the battle, and I will pay you some spice. I've seen deals where, as the Tleilaxu, I said, I'll throw the battle, but you have to kill one of my leaders. And I'll throw Blinn, or I'll throw even a good one. I'll say, look, I'll throw in Hidar Fanagitica, who's a 4, and you'll collect a spice for him. Because the Tleilaxu, as the Tleilaxu, I may want to have some of my leaders dead so that I can make Golas out of better leaders belonging to other factions. So that is a very common deal that we see when the Tleilaxu are in the game. And there's even been situations where somebody said, look, I really need a lot of spice, and so I want you to kill my leader as well, and I'll kill your leader. We're agreeing to murder each other's leaders, but I will dial a little bit higher so that I collect the spice for the dead leaders. And sometimes it's a matter of, hey, why don't you block this stronghold, and then I won't attack your forces that are trying to get spice in the desert, so you collect all that spice, or I will move into this stronghold and sacrifice my 1 force. If you give me some of the spice that you're going to collect, or however much, a percentage of the spice you end up collecting from this territory or for whatever. So there's a variety of ways that you can sweeten the deal, or that you can do something that is fair, help out a faction that is fallen very far behind, and make it worth their while, especially if they're the one with so many forces in the tanks and you're asking them to throw the battle, they're going to be losing yet another force, whatever the case may be. So you make it worth their while. Like, I'll give you enough spice so that you can pay to revive a few extra forces, or you'll have that spice for shipping or for buying a treachery card later on. So wealthy factions have got a lot of incentives that they can use. And even the non-economic factions sometimes have gotten some spice. So that is basically how the dealing portion of it works. Storm order is a big factor in this, and you always have to pay attention to storm order, in my opinion, because somebody who's in a strong position, if they're moving early, they're going to be able to get into the strongholds, and so you're not really talking about stronghold blocking then. you're talking about who can beat this faction in at least one of these strongholds to prevent the win. But when somebody is going, at least one faction is going before the strong faction or the strong alliance, that is when you are trying to arrange for these deals to block the strongholds if you can. You may not be able to block enough strongholds to prevent them from getting into 3 strongholds, but you may be able to force them, if they want to get into a 3rd stronghold, they're going to have to go in and face faction X or faction Y, who has a lot of forces or has the ability to bring a lot of forces in. So maybe the Emperor is in Habanya, and you want to block Tuik Siege so that the Harkonnen have to go into Habanya if they want to get into a 3rd stronghold when they ship and move, irrespective of whether the Emperor goes before or after. They already have a strong presence there, and maybe the Harkonnen doesn't want to take on 3 Sardaukar and 7 normal forces in Habanya, which is not an unusual setup for the Emperor to have down there. Now, there's a few nuances to some of the new factions, and let's go right into ECAS. Now, ECAS has an advantage called Occupy, and the way that works is if they are in an alliance, ECAS and their ally can both be in the same territories, and that includes strongholds. So normally you cannot be in the same territory as your ally, but this breaks that rule, and those forces essentially count as one faction. So if ECAS and their ally are in Arrakeen, they are not blocking a stronghold. That just counts as if ECAS is in there alone. So that means another faction can add their forces to Arrakeen. It also means that both ECAS and their ally can add more forces. So neither one of them is blocked from adding more through shipment or by movement into a stronghold that they are already in. And in fact, let's say that you have Atreides in Arrakeen, and you have ECAS is allied with the Fremen. And Atreides is the only one in there. The Fremen, on their turn, they move their forces into Arrakeen. So now you have those 2 factions there. ECAS can still ship into that territory because they are allied with the Fremen. And so they're just using their Occupy advantage. Those forces, they during that turn, they'll essentially count as ECAS forces, and ECAS can ship in so that they can get that bonus you get from Occupy. And that bonus is also a combat bonus. So when it's time for either any of those factions to battle in Arrakeen, ECAS and their ally will decide which of them is going to be the one actually fighting the battle. And if they can't agree, ECAS will decide. And who's fighting the battle means that faction is the one that will play a leader and will play treachery cards. Irrespective of which one of them is fighting the battle, it's ECAS's allies' forces that will get dialed. So in this case, if ECAS is fighting this battle in Arrakeen with the Fremen as their ally, they would be dialing the Fremen forces. And if there are Fedaykin in there, they're dialing that as well. And ECAS does not have to spend spice to count those Fremen at full strength in advanced. The ECAS forces, irrespective of which one of them is fighting the battle, will add half of their strength at full strength to the battle plan, and then half of them will go to the tanks. And it rounds up and rounds down in ECAS's favor. So that's how that works. In terms of the Mauritani, they have their enemy of my enemy advantage. And the way that works is it allows them to get into an alliance. If they have a terror token in a stronghold and somebody enters that stronghold, instead of triggering the terror token, the Mauritani can say, let's form an alliance. Now, if the other player says no, then Mauritani has to trigger that terror token. And it's usually pretty bad for whoever that faction is. But a lot of factions are like, you know what, I really don't want you to assassinate one of my leaders or blow up all of my forces here. So yes, let's form an alliance. And so they are both now in the stronghold, allied, but someone has to move out. In fact, the first faction that can move out must move out. So you cannot stronghold block by forming an alliance with the Mauritani and then just staying there and saying, yeah, we'll just wait until the end of the turn and then one of us has to go to the tanks. No, you must move out if you can. If you moved in and Moritani has already gone, then your forces just go to the tanks. So you're not really going to be blocking anything. The last thing that I'll cover here in terms of stronghold blocking is the guild in advanced. And the guild has this advantage in advanced Dune where they can decide when they're going to go in turn order for the shipping and movement phase. So it doesn't matter where they are in storm order. They can choose to be first, they can choose to be last, or they can choose to go between any two factions. So stronghold blocking, when you're trying to stop the guild, is going to be very challenging because they can choose to go before any of the other factions could do some blocking. Additionally, the guild are a great faction to make a deal with for stronghold blocking because they can go whenever they want. So you may say, I'll tell you what, guild, why don't you, well, let's make some kind of a deal. And it may be that I throw a battle for you here, or if you come in and, I will spend a lot of spice to ship somewhere absurd, like I'm going to ship straight to the polar sink. So you're going to get a lot of spice out of that, whatever it is, whatever it is you're trying to get them to do it. And it may just be, look, help us stop the Atreides or the Moritani or whoever it is from winning this game. Please go early in the turn order so that you can send a force in here or send a bunch of forces in and I'll throw the battle to you. So that flexibility is great. A lot of times the guild player is just thinking about what is in it for them, and maybe not looking at the big picture in terms of how can I prevent a stronger faction or one that's really in a better position to win. I can't win this turn. I'm only in one stronghold, and I don't want to go. I don't want to do the Carthag to Arakeen, Carthag to Siege Tabor move, or I can't. It may be that I just don't have enough forces at the moment. Whatever the case may be. And maybe you do want to get into them, but you're going to make a deal in order to throw one of those battles. Like I'll throw to you in Carthage, you throw to me in Siege Tabor. And so we're stronghold blocking in two places, and we're each going to get something out of it. So another nice way to make that deal. But don't count out the guild. They're very handy, but they're also very sneaky. So you could be making all these plans to, yes, before you go, you will block here, and the guild can say, you know what, I'm going to go first here, and I'm just going to nip this in the bud, and I'm going to ship in and get into these strongholds while I can. So a very important element to what makes that a strong faction and a strong advantage for them. So that's about all I can think of to talk about now for stronghold blocking. Let me know, again, if you have any questions about any part of this or anything that I didn't cover, or certainly raise some points, describe some of the stronghold blocking deals or tactics that you like to use, and we can make it into more of a discussion here. And if we need to do a follow-up video or a battle language where we just talk about stronghold blocking tactics and other strategies to prevent a faction from winning until you have a chance to be competitive as well. And we'll work on that. That's it, everybody. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again soon.